What's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 209 of the Junkies Podcast. Well, after almost 2 years of dodging COVID, I finally got it. Actually, I think I might have jinxed myself at the time of the recording this episode because I was telling Nate I think that I just can't catch this stuff, but apparently I was wrong. So I woke up last Thursday morning and just did not feel right. And I used one of the, I don't know if you've all ever heard of it. It's called a whoop strap, and it tracks like rest, strain, your pulse, and a bunch of other things. And I just noticed that, when I got up Thursday morning, my vitals were off, and my recovery, which is usually in the 70s to 100s, it was down to a 30%, and my resting heart rate was up, which I thought was odd. I mean, that was like the first red flag. It was hitting like 78 beats per minute, in which I'm usually in the mid to low 60s, and I just had an overall sense of feeling that something was not right. And I figured, it was because I went to bed later than usual and got up a little bit earlier. I figured I just didn't get enough rest. And I did not think it was anything related to COVID because I didn't have any symptoms other than I just didn't feel right. There's something in my body was telling me that, I was off. So I ended up going to work, and about an hour into my shift, it just hit me. And I started getting body aches and a massive headache, like a squeezing type headache, like my head was in a vice. And so, I told everybody at work, I was like, hey, I'm getting out of here. I'm not feeling well. I'm going to go home, going to get some rest. And I took a COVID test when I got home because we got like the at-home test or whatever you get at the pharmacy. And I was negative. So I was like, okay, cool. Maybe a common cold. Maybe, it's flu season. There's that. And, later on in bed that night, I got one of those pulse oximeters, and I was checking one of those, pulse oximeter checks your oxygen levels. And it just, like my body didn't feel right, and I wasn't having a hard time breathing, but it just felt like I wasn't getting enough air. And sure as shit, man, I put that thing on the end of my finger, and I was down to like 89% blood oxygen level, which I guess that's pretty bad. But I just kind of laid there and did some breathing and stuff. I made sure to load up on vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc and all that stuff just to try to get my immune system up and going and pumping a little bit more than usual. And plenty of fluids and everything. The next day I got up and I was feeling a little bit better. Body aches were kind of gone, but like my chest was feeling kind of tight. But I think I'm pretty much, on the back end of this whole thing, kind of been recovering in bed for the past couple of days. Definitely need to do get some more rest. I think that's the biggest thing is rest, plenty of fluids, vitamins, all that good stuff. I got up, yesterday. I didn't have my sense of taste or smell, which I thought was odd. And it was, not odd because I guess that's one of the symptoms of COVID, but, kind of going through the whole thing. And I was like, man, just things aren't tasting like they should. And finally I told my wife, I was like, hey, I'm pretty sure I lost my sense of taste and smell. And I went over and tried to smell a candle that was in the living room. And I was like, yeah, that's done. So I was like, let me check my taste. And so I grabbed like a spoonful of minced garlic and chewed on that. And I was like, yeah, there's nothing there, like no sensation, no taste, whatever. But this morning I actually got up and used it's called a Navage system. And I got really bad sinuses anyway. So I used that, but I put some iodine droplets in there. I read a couple articles about running irrigation through your nose or your nasal passages with diluted with iodine or iodine diluted with water. And so I did that, and it cleared everything out. And then this morning, I'm slowly getting my taste back. That's just what I've been dealing with the past couple of days. And like I said, I hope nobody gets this stuff. It's nasty. It's not something you want to have. And I think eventually everybody's going to get it because, it's just spreading like wildfire. So just stay safe out there. Do what you can. Try to avoid it. Stay out of large gatherings. Just take precautions to protect yourself and others. But I thought it was kind of funny because in this episode, I'm telling Nate, that I've been to all these different states and stuff over the past couple of years, and I just can't get COVID. And I've been around so many people that's been in contact with it and just never got it. And then somehow, boom, it, hits me this week, the night after I talked to him. I don't know, maybe it was fate, but anyway, in this week's episode, I'm sitting down and chatting with Rush and Nate Bowman about their training initiative called Weld Labs. Now, you may have seen this stuff on their Instagram posts and the stories about it, but essentially they're going to be touring around to different schools and businesses to help train employers, employees, students, and educators to improve welding efficiency and also introduce them to new technology. And I think this is awesome because most of the companies that I deal with, they have no idea about the different welding technology that's actually out there. And I think by Nate and Rush getting out there and working with these companies, we're going to start to see a change in the industry. I mean, we've made so many advances in the world of welding, and companies are still out there, like running short circuit when they could switch to an advanced process or advanced waveform and get more deposition, faster travel speeds, or maybe just, switch to a metal core or a flux core and get better penetration. But some companies just, they resort to the whole, well, that's the way we've always done it mentality. And, I think we got to change that. And if we want to remain competitive in a global market, we have to start adopting some of this newer technology that allows us to increase production. I think we also need to be making sure that this type of stuff is taught in welding schools as well as in the welding industry. And if you're a school out there, there's just so many different grants and scholarships available, whether it's through the AWS. I know there's certain like big box stores like Home Depot and Walmart. They've got different grants and stuff. If you're a high school, Northern Tool and Equipment does the grants. Start investing in some of this newer technology, even if it's just one machine, so you can start training your students on this stuff because it's coming to the industry. It's inevitable. So that's one thing I did with my program is I quit teaching oxyacetylene welding back in 2016 because nobody's hiring for it. I'm trying to train my students for the skills that employers are actually looking for. So we'll get into all that and more right after a quick word from the supporters of the show. Today's episode of the ARC Junkies podcast is brought to you by Lincoln Electric, the welding experts. You all know they make great machines, gear, and consumables, but what you may not know is they also have awesome seminars and hands-on workshops. I've been attending Lincoln workshops long before they became a supporter of the show, and I highly recommend them to employers, welders, engineers, CWI, and anyone else looking to broaden their knowledge base when it comes to welding. They have classes on motorsports, structural, CWI prep courses, educational workshops, advanced process seminars, and more. I'm actually going to one of their classes in Georgia the first week of February for a class on welding procedure development, which is being taught by a good friend and mentor of mine, Mr. Charlie Cross. You can find more information on all Lincoln Electric classes and seminars by going to lincolnelectric.com and clicking on the Education tab. You can also save 10% on welding machines and fume extractors when you go to store.lincolnelectric.com and use code word ARCJunkies10. Or you can save 20% on all gear and accessories when you use ARCJunkies20. That's store.lincolnelectric.com. Lincoln Electric, the welding experts. We're also brought to you by my good friends over at Rockmount Research and Alloys. They make rods and wires to tackle your biggest welding challenges. Rockmount rods and wires are designed to weld stronger and last longer. Whether you're a maintenance and repair welder by trade, a mechanic that knows his way around a welding machine, a job shop, or just a mobile welder doing side work, Rockmount has the electrodes to help you get the job done right the first time, every time. Let's say you need to weld up some parts on a front end loader that keep breaking. Try out the Brutus electrode and get a higher tensile strength with more elongation compared to 7018 and 70S6. You can also use that rod to weld unidentifiable dissimilar metals such as nickel, tool steel, manganese, and cast. Or maybe you need to do a little bit of buildup on some parts that have been worn down to abrasion. Check out the Apollo A electrode. This electrode has been developed to produce the most crack-resistant welds on heavy equipment. The Apollo A is superior for metal-to-metal wear applications. You can find out more information on these electrodes and more at rockmountwelding.com. And don't forget, you can get all your Rockmount rods and wires right through MSC Direct and get free shipping right to your door. We're also brought to you by ISOTUNES, makers of my favorite piece of PPE. They make Bluetooth headphones that are OSHA and NIOSH approved to be used as hearing protection in the workplace. My favorite pair are the Pro 2.0 because they have a built-in mic with noise cancellation, so I can make calls while I'm in the shop and be able to hear the person on the other end. They also come in really handy when I have to call in an order or get tech support while I'm out in the shop and all the equipment and grinders are running. And as an added bonus, I'm protecting my hearing. You can get $10 off your first pair when you go to ISOTUNES.com and use ARC Junkies in the discount box at checkout. We're also brought to you by Everlast Welders. They make great machines at an affordable price. Now, it doesn't matter whether you've been in the game for 20 years or you're just starting out. These machines run great and they're priced just right. Whether you're in the market for a stick, MIG, TIG, or a true multi-process machine, you can pick up one today without breaking the bank. Everlast inverter machines and plasma cutters come with a 5-year warranty, so you got nothing to lose. I've been using my Everlast in my home shop for over 2 years now, and I'm extremely happy with them. They've been able to handle everything I've thrown at them. Whether it's aluminum and stainless TIG work on my 255 EXT or mild steel MIG welding on my Cyclone 200E, you can find the machine that's right for you at everlastwelders.com. And don't forget to use Arc Junkies in the comment section at checkout to get that free Nova foot pedal and TIG torch upgrade when you buy any machine that comes with a stock foot pedal. Everlast Welders. Weld mean, weld green. All right, folks, you know what time it is. Fire up your machines, drop your hood, and turn me up 5.
Hey everyone, this is Dusty from Pacific Arc TIG Welding. You're hanging out with my man Jason Becker, and this is the Arc Junkies Podcast.
You're listening to the Arc Junkies Podcast, helping you make every weld better than your last with each episode. And now your host, Jason Becker.
All right, Nate, Rush, welcome back to the show, man. I appreciate you guys coming out because I know that both of you guys snagged up by the crud. We were talking a little bit before the show, and just like a typical welder, yeah, man, I'm feeling sick. Don't feel so great, but shit, man, I'm gonna show up to work anyway, boss.
Yeah, we got stuff to do. You know?
Yeah, the world's not gonna stop turning because I got the sniffles. But Nate, you got the Rona, man. How's that been?
Yeah. So Brian and I, for Central, we were down in Southern Oregon, setting up some welding booths, actually at Kristen Albro's school, Meltdown Metal Art. She moved from South Carolina to Southern Oregon and took a job at a high school. That's actually one of our customers at Central Welding. The booths and the way that the classroom's set up, it's really difficult for the instructor to kind of see the students. There's lots of little places to hide and things like that. Not a great thing in a high school program.
Right.
So I had built some booths out of 2-inch, 2x2, 120 wall steel, just kind of basic frame booths, real easy material to work with, easily expandable, super durable, and relatively cheap. We built some booths for a school out in Spray, Oregon. So I just kind of took that same design, and Brian and I built the first couple booths for them. But in the process of doing that, there was multiple students that tested positive, and we were already there and had spent, a couple days there working with the students, and we're like, well, we're fine for right now. And then, Friday, Brian was not feeling well, and Saturday I wasn't feeling well, so I've just been living in my pajamas for the past week in the basement.
That's always a good spot. So you're quarantined from the wife and everything? I got home on Friday night and I didn't have any symptoms at all. And I didn't hear, Brian had tested negative on Friday. So we were like, well, I don't have any symptoms. I'll be fine. So I got home Friday night and everything was normal. And I'm like, well, Brian tested negative, so we don't have to really worry about it too much. And then, late Friday night, I started feeling crappy, and Brian calls me in the morning on Saturday and he's like, hey man, I tested positive today. And then I started feeling really crappy on Saturday. So by that time it was she was already definitely exposed. So it was well, and I think if you're in the same house, it's going to be really hard to not pass it along. That's what I thought. So we had probably a month or two ago, I had had the Friday off from work, and I had to go do some stuff. So I had some stuff to do out in Tampa, but first I had to go to my weld supply shop in Orlando, and then I had to run out to Tampa and then back. So I was in my car for 8 hours. Unbeknownst to me, my daughter was COVID positive. We didn't find out till that following Sunday, but my son and I were in the car with her the entire 8 hours for that day. And then, came back home, and I was fine. He was fine. She still had a little cough, sniffles, and myself and my kids, both of them we've got really bad allergies, and the sun is shining year round and the pollen is just flowing down here in Florida. So it's like a year round ailment. Like here, like I carry Afrin with me everywhere I go. Just, I've got freaking allergies. So I thought she had allergies. No big deal. So I'm out here editing the podcast that Sunday afternoon, and my wife comes out. She's like, hey, your daughter and I both just tested positive for COVID. I'm waiting on my son's results. She goes, you need to get in here and take a test. And I'm like, oh, shit, man. Like, I cannot afford to get this right now. And went inside, took the test. Both my son and I were negative. Took care of my wife and my daughter that entire week. I was still going to work and stuff, masking up. And, like, I work pretty secluded now as the program manager. So I can just kind of go to work, close the door. I don't have any symptoms. I'm not really interacting with a lot of people. But, I mean, even at night, I'm home with her. She was still taking my son to and from school and everything. She was relatively good. We got her the monoclonal antibodies. Like, as soon as Monday opened up, I took her down and got her shot up with all that good shit. But, like that whole week, my son and I, neither one of us caught it, which I was surprised. I was like, okay, now's the time. Get it over with, get done with it, build the antibodies, and like nothing. It's just it's weird. Yes. I'm surprised I haven't got it yet, because like with all the traveling I do, like I've been to Iowa, Wisconsin, Chicago. We were all in Chicago together.
Texas. And I were talking about this before. We were like, man, when we were out in Chicago at FabSec, like, I mean, we went out and you'd go into a bar and they'd be like, oh, you gotta have a mask on. Then you go in the bar and then literally no one in the entire bar had a mask on at all. And it's just like, okay, all right.
There was one time, like when I was in Iowa, I got up at like 2:00 in the morning and it was like, oh man, I've definitely got corona. Like I'm sweating. Like I've got it. I'm going to be locked in this hotel for a week. This sucks. And this was like March last year. I was like, man, this is not good. I'm going to be, stuck in this hotel, stuck in Iowa for a week. And it turns out, no, I was just still kind of had like a pretty good buzz going on from dinner, and the air conditioner kicked off. So I was just warm. So once I turned the AC back on, I was like
freaking out.
Yeah. I was like, okay, we're good here. Like I bought one of those damn pulse oximeters, so you can put it on the end of your finger and it measures your oxygen levels. Like $40 at Walgreens, but I figured as much traveling as I'm doing, like I want to be like in check with all this. I threw that on my finger. It was like 98%. I was like, okay, good. Well, yeah, dodged that bullet.
I got down to 94.
Oh,
on like Saturday or Sunday, I got down to 94, but I'm back up to 97, 98 now. So
that's good.
I got like weird symptoms today. Like my face hurts.
That's what you were saying. I was going to pull the dad joke and be like, it's killing me.
Oh God. I know. That's what my brother Alex said too. He's like, oh man, he's like, it's killing me. No, it just like stings. It like stings like from my forehead to the top of my beard. I'm just like, oh, like what is this like symptom? Just annoying. But I mean, whatever. Like anytime I travel, I mean, probably you do the same. I mean, if you're traveling a lot, I typically plan to, kind of be a little isolated for a little bit of time just to make sure that, I'm not passing anything along to anybody before I set up a meeting with somebody or something like that. So this week is no different. I got the guys that I work with, we're going to be doing a class in LA with Charlie Cross.
Nice.
It's a welding procedure development course in LA.
Mm-hmm.
He's putting on, and so I'm working on getting the guys on my team, Brian and Blair, and maybe a couple other guys that I work with out to that course in LA to learn from Charlie. I mean, if you've met Charlie or anybody knows who Charlie Cross is, like, just being in his presence is pretty dope. Rush, you can totally go to this course if you want. It would be really cool if you want to come.
Sounds like a good idea.
Actually, Rush, hold off on that one because Nate's a little under the weather. I know you got a little bit of a bug right now, but you don't have corona, so you're still good. But I'm actually going to Charlie Cross's class in Atlanta. So Rush, if you want to go to like a good class, you want to go to Charlie Cross's class in Atlanta. Because, like, I don't know about going to L.A., man. I'd rather go to Atlanta, Georgia than Los Angeles. Unless you're talking about, like, L.A., like, lower Alabama, but I don't think that's what you're talking about.
No. No, the West Coast L.A.
Yeah.
Lower Alabama, L.A.
Yeah, lower Alabama, man. That's the only L.A. I've ever been to.
straight through Mobile.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about, so you and Rush have this deal going on now, Weld Labs. What exactly, for the folks at home that haven't heard about this, that didn't get to watch the live event or haven't been following the new Instagram page, what is Weld Labs?
It's a couple things. We've been trying to figure out how to define it. And we kind of define it in a couple ways. Like, one, it's continuing education for the modern welder. And then two, it's the Swiss Army knife of solving welding problems that are in the industry. So, there's a couple different like approaches that we're using to kind of like solve some of the issues that are happening. So, number one thing that we're doing is Lincoln's actually sponsoring us to visit 6 high schools throughout the next year to spend 3 days, not necessarily just high schools, but high schools and tech schools for a 3-day event where we come out and just weld and work with the students and the instructors. It's not anything super fancy or particular or anything like that. It's just helping kind of close that gap between, the R&D work that Rush and I do, the tools and equipment that Rush and I get a chance to see and use, and then being able to like take those things out there and put those in the hands of the people that are coming into the industry. Kids and people that are taking welding courses right now, have a lot of really awesome things to look forward to in the future of welding. I mean, there's a lot of great technology and things that make your life easier and safer and, just better as a welder. And at a lot of schools and a lot of places, due to funding or just lack of knowledge, they don't really have an opportunity to see those things. So when Rush and I were at FabTech and, we got talking about kind of some of the issues that we were seeing in the industry, that was one of the main things that we talked about as a way to kind of start closing that gap and start making a difference. The flow of welders into the industry, get them in the right mindset, and then give them the tools that they need to be successful, whether it's, having a resource that they can lean on, in our DMs or, just the motivation that they need to go out and get after it in the industry, by setting a good example. So yeah, that's a main approach. We're going to come down and see you, and do an event with you. We're working with, we worked with a local manufacturer recently on training up a new welder. There's obviously, they talk about this skills gap and wage gap and problems, finding welders and hiring welders. That's all a real issue. But getting out there and under the hood with a welder at a shop and helping them move from not having the skills to get a job to having the skills to get a job and go out into production, is something that we just did recently. And we were able to get this guy out on the shop floor. I've been kind of checking in on this guy, but it looks like due to I would say the soft skills that people miss. I mean, we can't teach you to show up to work. We can't teach you to have a good attitude. But we can teach you how to weld, and we can teach a company how to identify someone that may or may not have the skills. We can teach a company how to build a training area. We can teach them how to test their welds and how to, accurately develop a procedure to weld on whatever it is that they're welding. So, I mean, there's just so many like little things that we're doing, and, by going out and actually really doing these things and not just talking about them, it gives us more information as to what's really happening on the ground today. And that's kind of hard to find unless you're in the middle of it.
Yeah. So I'm going to switch it over to Rush. Rush, what are some of the things that you've noticed, like through your travels and working with Weld Labs and putting all this stuff together? What are some of the areas that you see that, we kind of need to focus in on and identify and, apply corrective action to?
The first kind of route that I've taken, like in established with Weld Labs, is the advanced process learning, which is focused on the end result of knowledge gained. And that's the learning aspect, not the teaching. And so we've had people that have asked us about our curriculum, or like, what's the curriculum? We'd like a set like guideline of what you're going to do. And the thing about it is each job, each individual potential customer or client has different needs and different things that they need, specific usually to territory. So like if you think of welding, there's so much different types of welding and different procedures and processes and different products that are built all across the country, all across the world. And those things are different from territory to territory. So you think of like the Gulf territories in the US, like pipeline, oil, you have a lot of that going on, where here in like northern Utah, we have a lot of aerospace and off-road in the Salt Lake area, like all down through like southern Utah, like down in Moab with the off-road scene. So there's like a big general fab area in that. So there's a certain training that's going to take to build like off-road cage work for like the Jeep scene, the race scene, or aerospace. You had food process work, like the sanitary stainless, like that's very different than like stick welding pipe. So there's a bunch of different things like that we want to like focus on developing the best outcome for whoever it is that is looking for that knowledge to gain. And so that's where advanced process learning comes in. And what's really cool is, for instance, like the example of this manufacturer, this welding shop that we visited just recently, and we went in and helped train this new hire. This guy, he wasn't able to pass the weld test to get the job that he was applying for, but he had a potential great attitude, like, and he was excited about the job. And so this business owner he brought us in to train him and coach this new hire and get him up to speed to be a passable trained welder. And he's able to go into his workforce. And it's a high risk investment, but it comes with a high reward, because now you have a new hire as an owner. You have a new hire that has been trained and that you can trust out on your production floor. And so you eliminated mistakes and bad habits straight out of the go, and you're set up for better success. And so that's just something like that we've done that's been really cool. It's been really cool to see like that process through, and how us being there in person and being on the actual production floor with these people and working with them, how much benefit that actually brings versus like a classroom setting. Not that it's not that it's like you don't learn in a classroom, you just like on the job experience is really where the most of your knowledge is gained. And so us being able to go in on location, even if it's at a school, like we're going to come out and do trainings with you, like with your school this year, Jason. And then we'll be able to help like build everything from the ground up, like from everything, like from start to finish, like through the process. There's a lot of things that we've noticed that are overlooked as far as like the prep and finish work of a weld. A lot of the focus is just about putting the weld in and having the weld look aesthetically sound. Mm-hmm. And that's really the most of what we've seen the structure of. And there's a lot of pretty welds that don't have that structural integrity behind their looks. And it's not that that's wrong or it's always bad. It's just that there's more to it than what's on the surface. Metallurgy and welding is a pretty deep science, and it's pretty fascinating, and it's cool to learn about, and we just want to help spread that knowledge.
No, 100%. I think you just touched on like so many different aspects of like so many things. So like I want to go back and talk, because I think it's really cool what you guys are doing, because talking about regional type welding. So I actually had this discussion today. I did a presentation with Iowa Skilled Trades with Brandon Patterson, Scott Robbie was on the call, Stephanie Hoffman, David Madero, Shit, I know I'm missing somebody. Yeah, Scott Robbie, Stephanie Hoffman, David Madero, and Brandon Patterson for Iowa Skills USA, Iowa Skilled Trade. And they had that's one of the questions they were asking us is like, what types of welding are there? You know, what's the best welding to get into? And because it's a regional thing, it's kind of a loaded question. So like down here in Central Florida, we're like second in the U.S. when it comes to manufacturing currently. So most of my welders, they're getting into in structural. So we're heavy on structural repair, structural install, structural fabrication, and ironwork. But along with that, you know, the manufacturing aspect. We don't do a whole lot of pipe here in Central Florida. There's a couple small shops. But then if you go out to Texas, you know, they're doing a lot of pipe. But then if you go up to where Rush is at, you know, you guys are doing a lot of like roll cages and like off-road vehicles and aerospace. If you go out to California, they're doing a lot of seismic type welding. So, you know, they're using a lot of flux core with T8 or T6 and T8 wire. New York, you know, same thing. They're doing high-rise buildings and stuff like that. So it just depends. You know, you get into like the Virginia and Ohio, they're doing a lot of mining work and hard facing, you know, different aspects. So it's like you can't build a welding program. And I think that's why we've never really come out with a national curriculum for welding, because it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. You know, everybody has like their own little area. And yeah, you get some people from small rural towns that they learn how to weld, and then they'll go to Texas and weld pipe because that's where the money's at. Or they'll go up into Dakotas and, you know, or Canada, you know, back when all that was going on, and they would make money on the pipeline. Or you have people that go down to, you know, the east coast of Florida because they wanted to get into aerospace. But that's not where all the welders are going. You know, most of them are gonna stay regional. You know, so having the adaptability with Weld Labs to go in there and show, okay, we're in this part of the U.S., they're heavy in structural. We can show them some structural stuff. Or, you know, we go out into the Carolinas or where you're at. Okay, we can get into, you know, like NASCAR and NHRA type welding. Or, you know, whatever the case may be, you have that ability to adapt because both of you understand welding at a fundamental level. You know, like understanding the basics of how to run these different processes, stick, MIG, TIG, flux core. I think that really separates a lot of welders. When you understand all the processes, now you just need to look into the application of it, you know? So being very fluid with the training and be able to provide so many different aspects of the training, I think that's going to help out a lot.
I think like welding to me, like it's the same, doesn't matter what process that you're welding. I mean, or what you're welding together. I mean, if you look at the way that most things are designed, like whether it's a roll cage or a bridge or a handrail or whatever, I mean, most welds are fillet welds. And, you know, so you're doing a fillet weld. What's the size of weld that you need to put in? What's the joint configuration, you know, look like how, you know, so again, this is just very, very, very basic stuff. A lot of people, in welding education and a lot of these like publications and things like that, they want to talk about very technical, well, I'm welding this really special weird alloy to this other really special weird alloy. And we want to go into this big white paper about this. And it's like, man, we're walking into shops everywhere, USA, and people don't understand what voltage means or how to adjust their voltage or how to set their machine correctly. And that's a problem. Well, like with welding education across the country. And it's not educators' faults. It's not, you know, AWS's fault. It's not, you know, anybody's fault. It's just the industry, the welding industry has been in this like cycle of, you know, like just the mentality of welders. I mean, you look at the old time welders, it's the guy we always talk about in the shop that has the really shitty attitude that, you know, is nuclear certified and you don't ever tell him how to do anything or set anything or whatever. Well, that guy is everywhere in the welding industry. Yeah. He's a member on the AWS board. He's a member on the code committee. He's works for ASME. He's the, you know, head welding, whatever at this manufacturing place. And that person that thinks that they know everything that is stuck in the way that they've always done it is clogging up the industry for the rest of the rest of us out there that are hungry, like the people that are on social media taking pictures of their welds and taking a lot of pride in the stuff that they're doing. So, where Weld Labs comes in, like we want to fan the flame of those people that are willing to learn and willing to say that they don't know everything, because Rush and I, we're willing to say that we don't know everything, but we want to show you and everyone else everything that we do know in a way that's easy to digest, a way that you can jot down in your notebook or slap on the inside of your welder or welding helmet or in your procedure, notebook or whatever. We want to give you all the best data and the most up-to-date data that we have so that you can make educated decisions as a welder. There's a lot of welding people out there teaching technique, and they'll tell you about the little E's that they draw and their little weird pattern that they do, but they won't talk about all the knobs and switches that are on the front of their machine, or what the shielding gas flow is, or what the diameter of their cup is, or, about the hours worth of fit up and prep that they did on that weld joint. They just talk about, hey, watch what my hands are doing, or watch this puddle and then look at this weld. And, that's the easy part. The easy part is the part that you do with your hands. I mean, that's what makes skilled welders. And I think that welders that have more information or are exposed to more things, they can take those skills that they already have and then start pushing the limits of the equipment that they have. And they can start pushing the limits of the productivity that they can gain in their shops. And this is just a different approach to doing that. We're opening it up for people to see what we're doing.
Yeah. And it's funny, you brought up a couple of things that I've gotten messaged on Instagram both Instagram and Facebook this week. So when you talk about like the old crotchety guy in the shop, right? The guy that knows everything, you can't teach them anything. They're stuck in their ways and they're just like a prick to deal with. They end up chasing a lot of these kids, that get out of welding school and they've got aspirations to be somebody and they just need a mentor. So this dude reached out to me on Instagram. He's like, man, how do you deal with these people? Because like at first I was, I've been to a couple different companies and there's always this old crotchety guy and like all the older guys treat me like crap. And, it kind of made me not want to weld. So he ended up and just ditched out to opening his own business after a while. He's like, I can't take dealing with these people anymore. I think that's the mentality that we have to change in this industry. And I talked a lot about it with Mike Miller when I talked about the biggest kept secret in the industry is you got to swallow your pride. You can't be the one, it can't be all this macho stuff. Like I'm the only one in the shop that can do this type of work. Like, especially if you're getting ready to check out, you're getting ready to head into retirement, or you've been doing this for 20 years, show the next person coming in, whether it's a young man or a young woman, show them, teach them what you know. Don't hold on to that information. And I think everybody's just so job scared that, well, if I show this young kid, how to read this set of prints or, do this material takeoff or run this specific weld procedure, they're going to fire me because they're bringing him at like, a couple dollars less than what they've got me here for. And so everybody's so damn job scared that they don't want to show you anything. And I dealt with the same thing coming up through the ranks in the ironworkers. Like nobody wanted to show me anything because they were job scared. They were like, well, if I show him how to do this and he knows how to do it, they're going to get rid of me because he's just an apprentice. And, so he makes like $16 an hour and I'm making $26 an hour. Why do they need to keep me around if he knows how to do what I do? It's like you got to get rid of that mentality. If you're afraid somebody's going to take your job because you spend 20, 30 minutes showing them how to do what you do, you need to go home and do some damn research and make yourself a little bit more valuable and earn that money that they're actually paying you.
If your employer lets you go for training somebody else and building their workforce, they don't respect you, and it's probably past your time anyway at that point.
Exactly.
And so if you're scared of it, then you're scared of, I think that it comes down to you're scared of the lack of respect from your employer. So like share your knowledge. That's like, it builds everybody up and makes everything better.
Yeah, that's the first thing I did when I got appointed foreman out there on the job site is I grabbed a couple of the apprentices and I was like, come here. And they're like, what? And I busted out the blueprints and I was like, look, here's this is a frame line, and, here's how this stuff runs, and here's our elevation and our benchmarks, and here's, this column over here, and this is what these guys are working on. Because you know what? Tomorrow I can come in and say, hey, man, I need you guys to go over to, frame line F2 and F4 and go over there and, just kind of fill in all the work that needs to be done over there. And then, you're going to put in all these welds and make a moment connection. And like if I show them on the blueprints, now they're kind of self-sufficient. Now all I have to do is follow up. I don't have to, hover over and be like a helicopter foreman and supervise them and ridicule them all day. I can turn them loose and then just check up on them and make sure they're doing it properly. And if they're not, I can go in there and kind of aid them in the right direction. And that's just going to make them better people. It's going to make my life easier as a foreman or as the old crotchety guy in the shop, because now they're doing the work and I'm just giving them feedback to make them better. And it's going to make me look better at the end of the day.
I think the part that's hard, and this is probably going to sound like a little negative, is that a lot of these old timers and a lot of people that have been doing it for a long time, air quotes, just don't know. And they're afraid to show people that they don't know, or they don't know how to explain the way that they do it or why the welder runs well there. Like, I see it all the time. I mean, and it's like a pride thing, just with welders. And, I think a lot of that starts with, like imagine, let's say you got this crotchety guy that's working in a shop and he's like, man, I'm sick of making whatever I'm making. And the local high school or trade school offers a welding position to be an instructor. Well, it gets them out of the industry and it gets them benefits, and all they got to do is supervise a bunch of kids doing some welding. And then what happens is the people that send the kids to this class or whatever, they send all the shitheads over there. Like all the kids that like don't fit into all these other classes. So they're just like, let's pile all the kids that can't do anything else in this class, which is not good either. Like, why don't you put some smart people in the class? Because it'd be great to have some smart welders, but again, not the perception. So now you got a teacher that doesn't necessarily have any sort of teaching skills, that may have been doing something for 20 something years. And then you have a Rush, Kane, or I that gets into this class. And then we are like taking photos of our welds and stoked to do welding in any capacity. And then you get, I've talked about this in the past. I had an instructor that would just like straight up make fun of me for just being stoked about welding. And that doesn't make you like, for me, it was just fuel to do better. And I think for Rush, same way, like when people just didn't want you to succeed, it was like, well, I'm just going to become 10 times better than you. So like, you could talk shit all you want, but like, it's pretty obvious, like who has the real skill. Mm-hmm. But, we don't necessarily want that to be the case for everybody. Like, that's not the way to do it. We want people to feel like, one, like that it's cool to take pictures of your welds and be proud of the work that you do. Two, to not be afraid to leave a place, a school, whatever, if the people that you work for, the people you work with don't treat you the right way. Like, who cares? Like, if they're not going to treat you the right way or pay you a living wage, just tell them goodbye and go find a different place to work, especially if you're making under $20 an hour. There's plenty of places you can go to Wendy's and make 15. It's like when you're just starting out in the industry, like there's no reason to stay at a place where they pay you a poor wage and they don't give you any opportunity to grow up. There's none whatsoever. You have no obligation to them at all. Mm. And these companies, quite honestly, I mean, I'm seeing it at Central Welding, these companies that are closed off to listening to anything that anybody else is doing, those companies are the companies that are struggling the most right now. And then in the next 5 to 10 years, whether it's supply chain stuff, inflation, the average age of the skilled welders in their late 50s. Well, we've been saying that for years. We're consistently losing people to retirement they're dying.
It's
they're
a 5-to-1
whatever.
ratio right now. So for every 5 individuals retiring, you have one person coming in to take that slot. It's insane.
So it's like those people that are coming in to take those slots, maybe don't be a jerk to them. Maybe try and pass on like everything that you possibly know to those people so that they have a chance.
Right.
Because what's going to happen is, I use buckets as an example all the time. If you own a construction company and you need to buy a bucket and you need a bucket tomorrow, you don't really care whether it was made in Mexico or Canada or China or, South Korea. Who cares? You need to dig a hole tomorrow. And you're not going to wait for a bucket to come from Montana or from, wherever, you would really like it to come from, just because you want to support local business. We say that, but people don't actually really do that. Like, I bought a bucket from that was made from AMI Attachments in Canada because it's the best and it's significantly more money. It was, I'd be willing to bet that their welders are well taken care of. I would hope so for what I paid for that damn thing. But
you put their kids
their
through
customers, yeah, for real. But there are a few companies out there that take a lot of pride in their work and stuff. There's a lot of companies out there that are just trying to get stuff done. And that mentality is it's going to bite them in the ass in the next 5 to 10 years, just given the way that manufacturing's going, with this automation, coming, impending, like the cobots, man. Like if you build a widget, boy, I'd be worried, with the cobot.
If you got to build 1,000 widgets and it requires welding, like, the cobots are coming. But so I want to go back because now that like I'm in education, and the cool thing is you have a lot of the guidance counselors, like you said, that they're taking all the dumb kids, air quotes. Mm-hmm. And essentially those are the kids that aren't doing well in the math class and the science class, and they have no aspirations to go into college, and they're like, what do I do with this kid? I'll just throw him in the welding, I'll just throw him in the back corner of the welding lab. And for the longest time, that's always been, that's where you put the dumb kids, because I was the dumb kid when I was in high school. Like, I signed up for welding. But the thing is now, like, the guidance counselors are starting to realize, hey, like, this whole pushing everybody to college and pushing the dumb kids to the skilled trade, that's not working. So now the cool thing is I have guidance counselors coming to me saying, hey, can we take a tour of your welding facility? Can you do welding demos? Can you show up on a Zoom meeting and tell the students about what you do? So I think as those like older guidance counselors phase out, we've got a whole new group coming in. Our generation is coming into education, and they're pointing these kids in the right direction. They're saying, hey, like, I have a good friend that got into welding and he makes a damn good living. Go, we have a welding program here at the school. Go try that out. Or, I have a really good friend that's into architectural drafting, so you might want to sign up for this drafting and design course. And they're pushing these allegedly dumb kids, and they're not dumb. The fact of the matter is they just learn differently. So they learn with their hands. They got to put their hands on it. They're kinesthetic learners. That's like my buddy Ryan Eubank, who, Nate, I don't know if Rush, if you've got a chance to meet him, but that's exactly what his school's done for years. They push the alleged dumb kids to him. And like, I'm using dumb in air quotes because I want everybody to be perfectly clear that these are smart, young, intelligent men and women that are just getting pushed in there because the school system doesn't know how to deal with them. They're like, oh, they got ADD and they're dyslexic, just shove them back there in the welding lab. We don't have to worry about them. And this guy's taking these kids and sending them to, placing in Skills USA and putting them in jobs where they're making $80,000, $90,000 a year out of high school. And you can quote me on that. This guy's been doing it for years. But I think it falls back to what you were saying, Nate, is they take this old crotchety dude that couldn't make it in the industry, but he squeaked by for 20 years, and all of a sudden a welding position opens up at a local high school or VOTEC school, and he applies for that job. The administration doesn't know dick about welding, and they're like, oh, yeah, you've been doing this for 20 years? Come on in, teach these kids. They've got no interpersonal skills. They barely had enough welding skills to make it for the past 20 years, and now they're teaching the youth of tomorrow to become educated and dedicated welders, and that's just not fitting. That's not. It's kind of putting the the wrench in the cogs, if you will. You know, it's screwing the whole process up. So, I mean, but then you've got other guys that they want to get into education for the right reason. You know, they've been in the welding industry for 15, 20 years. They know exactly what they're doing. But I mean, how the hell do you take that pay cut to drop down and teach in a public school system? That's the hard part right there, is the people that have the credentials and the knowledge and the know-how. You got to bring that wage gap up to, you know, to hire a quality person to take these kids and say, hey, you know what? I was told that, you know, when I was growing up that I was dumb and dyslexic and I had ADHD, and look at me now. I'm laughing every time I go to the bank on Friday, or, you know, when the check clears in my direct deposit nowadays. Those are the type of people you need teaching the welding programs. We don't have that yet.
I'm a perfect example. I didn't stay at my welding teaching job for more than, I was there for 2 years. I taught 2 years, and, you know, I easily was able to find a job that paid another 20, 30,000 more than I was making as a teacher. And it's like, why would I stay teaching high school welding as much as I loved it and had a good time? Like, it just didn't, financially, it just didn't make sense. Like, I'm also trying to make a living and make a career for myself. And, you know, how do you, if you're one of those people, like, how do you level up? But that's again, like, that's why Rush and I created this Weld Labs thing. Is like, we want to start giving the instructors, because there are instructors out there that are passionate about it. And, you know, a lot of these instructors have reached out to me and Rush over the years and asked us questions. That's where we're starting. You know, when Lincoln gave us the green light that they would sponsor us to visit these schools, you know, I had a whole bunch of people already in my head when I asked, you know, that I would really like to visit. And the fact that we can go out there and spend the time and, you know, as Rush was talking about, you know, identify the holes in real time, you know, what they're missing, and then be able to, like, learn from them, and then us teach them something, like, also at the same time. Like, we're just going out there to have fun and weld, and it keeps it kind of, I mean, it's a good time, but we're also going to be learning something, like, while we're there. And then it also exposes those, you know, not only that instructor to, you know, Lincoln, the rest of the industry, all the people that we work with. And it allows them to kind of start building their own network and building their own resources. And if we continue to do that, in other companies, maybe Miller will sponsor an influencer team or an influencer to go out and work with schools, or ESOB or whoever. We don't want to be the only people doing this. I think that if you're passionate about welding and you have the passion to teach people, these welding companies and these welding brands need to put their money where their mouth is and send people out and start spreading, like, the good word about welding. You know, like, I can't think of a better way to influence the future of welding, rather than start from, like, the people that need it the most, these high school welding instructors or community college instructors, and then the students that they have.
Mm. And I love the fact that you guys are going on site, because I've met so many people at, like, the Educators Institute. I've been to Lincoln's advanced educator workshops probably 5 or 6 times. I've been to the one that Ryan Eubank and Kyle Linko put on. Like, I go for additional training all the time, and I'm very fortunate to work where I work, and that school supports me in going off and learning more and becoming a better educator and bringing my other instructors with me. But not everybody can do that. So the fact that you guys can, like, just hook up to the trailer and start rolling down the road and go on site, I think it's going to make such a huge impact, because like we were talking about, there's so many educators that want and need access to this type of information, but they can't, you know, get the time off school. They can't get on a plane. I mean, hell, especially we're in the middle of a freaking pandemic, air quotes again, right now. And, like, people can't even leave the state of New York. And I know a couple instructors up there, you know, Scott Prince and Bob Clark. I mean, they're freaking great instructors, but they can't leave for training right now. So, I mean, the fact that you guys are able to...
Scott's one of the people on our list.
Yeah, the fact that you guys could get up in there and, like, you know, go talk to these guys and show their students, like, advanced processes, and even get some of the instructors caught up to speed. because there's people out there that, they got a heart of gold and they're in education for the right reasons, and they just may not have had access to, the best information and learning and classes and stuff as it relates to welding, but they want to do this. Their heart is in teaching and their passion is in welding, and you put those two things together, and you show up on site and you can educate this man or woman, and then once you leave, they can continuously pass that information on to every group of students that's rolling through that program. So I think, what you guys are setting up it's freaking awesome. And anything I can do to support your mission and your drive and you guys being able to get on site and help other people, it's amazing. It's something that the industry needs, and not just students and educators, but companies, being able to, do incumbent training remotely and like just show up with all the equipment right there on the trailer and say, hey guys, we can increase your productivity 30% just by changing out, stepping up the diameter of wire that you're using, or just something that, we all think is very simple and it's like common sense, but you've got a lot of companies still running short arc on 1/2-inch plate. And it's like, no, there's a better way,
Yeah. And it's in the big thing about Weld Labs also is it's non-brand bias. Like, we don't care what color machine you have. We don't care if it has, gauges on the front of it. It don't matter to us. Like, we want to help people win where they are at. That is the number one goal. Like, Lincoln is sponsoring the visits to the schools and stuff. Lincoln does a ton of sponsoring of things, for AWS events, for a lot of research in the industry. They're sponsoring me personally for the research and the stuff that I do in the industry. So it was that one was like an obvious thing, but as far as going out to these schools, like, we want to, or just even places of work, whatever equipment that you have, we want to show you how to get the most out of that. So you did bring up the business side of this. We are available to do consulting for businesses as well, in the same kind of way. The structure that we're kind of working off of is like a 3-day minimum for a visit. And planning on like between an 8 to 10 hour day where we're on site. And then we're, if we were at a business, we would be there going over your entire like production process, from where the steel comes in, how it's fabricated, how it's fit up, how it's welded, what happens post weld, whether there's any sort of rework or sanding or finishing or anything like that has to happen. So we get an idea of what's happening with your business. And then, as a fresh set of eyes, knowing the things that we know, getting to see all this modern welding technology, is there a wire that you can use on your current equipment, a different wire and gas that you can use that's going to make you more productive, that will give you some more money to be able to buy a more advanced process piece of equipment down the line? Maybe there's a piece of equipment that you want to try. We can help facilitate setting up that demo with one of the reps from any of those companies, literally anybody, Fronius, ESAB, Lincoln, Miller. I could call any one of those people, and I'm sure that they would be glad to come in with us and demo just about any sort of piece of equipment, wire or gas, that a customer wanted, especially given our reputation in the industry as being focused on the data behind what's happening. I don't care personally what color equipment you use or what wire you use, but it's important to, I think, to give people in the industry an opportunity and somebody that they can call and lean on to get an opinion about how they're building something. How often does somebody come into a shop and look at what you're doing and just, you get tunnel vision when you build the same thing for years and years. There could be something so simple that you missed just because you've been doing it for so long. And Rush and I both have different backgrounds in what we've welded and what we've worked on. We're both going to have a different perspective on how to do things. And we can kind of lay it out and say, here's some of the things that we're seeing. Here's some of the like low hanging fruit, if you will, that will really help you guys out. We walked around this one shop with the the thermal multimeter. And, you know, one of the things that these guys were having a lot of trouble with was their arc starts and spatter. We shot up all their ground clamps with a thermal camera and showed them that their ground clamps were, you know, near 200 degrees, some of them. And, you know, the same thing, Rob Tessier talked about this thing on when he came on. You know, that is something that showing them in person, showing them how to correct those things, and then giving them something like measurable that they can look at. It's like, hey man, we just fixed your ground. Like, look how much better this starts. And it's like night and day. It didn't cost them anything, like
$30
dollar wise.
Yeah. Like I talked about it on,
they put a new ground clamp on, or an eyelet, or whatever it might be. But things like that, not just saying that specifically, those are the kind of things that Rush and I can easily identify and bring up and come up with a course of corrective action to help a customer become more productive. I mean, if you have 5 to 10 people that work in your shop, I would comfortably say a welder out there costs you about $1 a minute per welder. And when you start looking at what a new grinder costs, or new ground clamp costs, or new ground cables costs, and the amount of money that you're wasting in lost productivity at $1 a minute times however many welders you have, this is where you can kind of start to make that money back and then start bumping your welders' wages up, you know, creating a better career path for them, creating kind of just a better career like for them. Mm-hmm. And then all the while making better quality parts, being more productive, your welding is safer, it's easier, you know, that all of these things I think companies need, but they're afraid to bring people like us in because they're afraid of being sold something. That's why Weld Labs, we don't sell anything like at all. Like we don't have some company that we come in with or anything like that. We're just here to tell you what you may be missing and point you in the right direction. And we can help facilitate any sort of testing that you want, because that's what we do. We measure stuff.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. This segment of the Arc Junkies podcast is brought to you by Strong Hand Tools, my favorite equipment for setup and fixturing. Strong Hand has the tools and accessories to make your life as a fabricator and a welder that much easier. They also make tools and accessories to make your shop life more economic and ergonomic. If you're a student, head on over to stronghandtool.com/ArcJunkies and register your school to receive a free gift pack of Strong Hand products. Now let's get back into the show.
It's a great way to do it. I recently helped a company just down the road from me. And like you said, I'm not trying to sell you anything. It's like, what wire you got, what machine you got. Okay, let's pull up the technical specs on that wire right here on the Google. Type in the wire brand.pdf. Okay, here's the voltage and wire feed speed it says we should be using. Let's go ahead and swap out your drive rolls to the appropriate drive rolls for what you're trying to do here. You know, because they're running like 035 V rollers, trying to run 045 flux core wire, and they're like, oh, that doesn't make a difference. But bullshit, let me show you. Just swap out the drive rolls. And then same thing with running that multimeter on there. Like, here's your hot spot. You know, you've got resistance in your ground clamp, so you're not getting all the amps that you're setting on the machine at the weld, because your freaking ground clamp, you can't see it because it's invisible. You clamp it to the bottom of the table, and you don't pay attention to it as long as you're getting an arc, you know. But look at that thing. You're cooking the damn ground clamp. Swap that thing out, you know, cut the cable back and, you know, redress that up and put a $30 brass ground clamp on there. And you're going to watch your weld productivity go through the roof just by something simple. You know, being able to go in there and show them all these stupid little shortfalls that, you know, like I said before, like 80% of your problems are caused by 20% of, you know, the causes. You know, so if you can fix those 20%, you know, you've eliminated 80% of your issues.
And that's most of the questions that we've got from like on our personal pages or through Weld Labs or going through in-person trainings, is it's bringing it back to the basics, all the simple things that are overlooked, and then going into machine diagnostics. Like, how is your machine set up? What is the actual process? What's happening? Like, just basic, like as simple and basic as it gets, and then build from there, because everybody's worried about the finish line and the end result, and they're trying to get there as fast as possible instead of just covering the basics and just going with the natural flow of it, because it's just it's welding, and just being able to know what you're doing and understand it that's the secret key ingredient, which is simple.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be overly complicated. I mean, that's probably the most surprising thing, I guess, to me as time has gone on and I get more and more questions. The questions that I get from people, I would say 99% of them are very, very simple and can be solved with just sending someone the correct weld settings, because they're trying to weld something and their wire feed speed and voltage is off, because they just don't know where to even start with something. Or they're welding aluminum, or they're welding something, and I'll text message Rush. I'll be like, hey, they're welding this. And Rush will give me, amperage, balance, frequency, like all the different things, shielding gas flow rate, like all the things that they need in order to make a weld successfully. And you pass that along, and then 15, 20 minutes later, they're like, send you a photo of a beautiful weld. And they're like, man, that fixed it. Yeah. So, we're going to try to continue to do that sort of support as often as we can. But because we've been continuing to get these same questions over and over again, that's one of the other things that we're going to address when we start doing our YouTube videos. That's another part of what we're doing. We're going to, the Weld Labs YouTube channel is 100% going to be free, and it's going to be able to be used by everyone. We want to put the data out there, and I think that's the best way to do it. And the other thing that we're doing with our data is we're going to have it independently verified. It's easy for any of us to make a mistake and say hertz when we mean frequency, or say balance when we mean something else, or say amperage when we mean voltage, or something like that. And a small detail like that can make somebody hear something wrong or understand something incorrectly. And we don't want that to happen. And if we're going to be putting out this educational stuff, we're going to have it independently reviewed prior to launch. And then we also want to have people's feedback on these settings and the topics in the comments, so that we can kind of have some discussion. Like, nothing that we say or do is set in stone. This is going to be put out as research with calibrated equipment, with calibrated shielding gas, and tested and tracked with ARC data monitoring, so that way we can show exactly what's happening in real time, so that way people can see the results in real time. We're going to be doing macro etches and bend tests, and running all sorts of different types of wire and equipment. Again, all to just show people how to set a machine, how to select a process to weld a certain different thing. And again, this is not super complicated. It sounds complicated. It's a very deep technical look at the basics of welding. And we want to kind of have set this standard of just information for people to use. And we want everybody to be able to use it, whether they're, an instructor like yourself, or a high school instructor, or somebody teaching a night class. And it's just, they want to teach people the basics of voltage and how it works in MIG welding. We want to be the resource for having the most definitive, easiest to understand videos on welding process and process selection. That's kind of the ultimate goal. And we're going to work with as many people as we can to make that happen. We don't know how to weld every process. Like we were talking with a company, and they weld a lot of pipe. Rush and I TIG welded pipe and tubing and that kind of stuff, but I've never been upside down in a ditch before. But it does sound like a lot of fun. And that's where I think that all of us as like welders, like, can find common ground no matter what process you run. Like, you're going to be good at something that I'm not. not everybody can weld like Rush. So, like we all have stuff that we can learn.
We all have limitations. Yeah.
Well,
I think it's great that you guys are starting off with the basics. Cause like you said, a lot of the questions I get are very simple, basic stuff. Like I had a question the other day and no discredit to the person that asked it, but he was talking about, hey, what's a stress riser? I was listening to episode, I think it was 204 when I had Celtic Welds on here. We talked about stress risers with aluminum MIG welding. And it's because everybody, that's what they see is that like that whip and pause with the aluminum MIG. And as well as I do, when you start whipping and pausing, your contact tip to work distance is it's getting short and long and short and long. And you can literally watch the front end of the machine, the amperage spike and drop and spike and drop and spike and drop. So every whip that you're doing, you're losing amps. Now you've got all these stress risers. Instead of just pulling the trigger and doing a slow, steady push down the weld seam and getting, equal penetration throughout the entire joint, now you've got that stack of dimes, so it looks cool for the gram, but your weld's shit, and it's probably going to crack. And at the end, you're probably going to get a crater crack. And it's the basics. Understanding the basics is what's going to help you eliminate a lot of that stuff. So I think starting off with the basics and showing people, hey, like here's what a lot of people do, and here's what you should be doing. Because like there's a lot of people in the industry that have been doing it wrong for 20 years. They're showing people, here's how I do it. And it's not right a lot of times.
Yeah. We don't want to call people out. Like that's not the goal with this at all. The big focus for us is just to show people the data and let people make their own decisions. Like if we post the video, we'll give you every single setting that we used to make those welds, and you can see what results we got with our skill level welding. And then you can see, the prep that goes into the part. You can see the testing that I do when I cut the weld open, or we do a fillet weld break test for both. You can see all of the results given these settings, and then you can take these settings and then apply it to the same exact process on your welder, whatever machine it may be, whether it's a Lincoln or Miller, ESAB, doesn't matter what it is. You can take and set your welder up identically and then make the same welds, and you should get the same results. And if you're not getting the same results, what do you need to look at? Is it a skill thing? Is it do you have something in your system that's not allowing you to get the same results? And I think that approach and that way of doing it is the best way to kind of eliminate, any sort of like gray area. I'm starting to see more people that teach welding post the settings. But what we do end up seeing is you'll have all the settings, but then they'll miss something like what the wire diameter is. But that matters a ton. Because if you take those same settings and you are welding with 045 wire because that's what you had, and they have 030 or 035, and then they apply those same settings, the amperage and voltage,
at least 125 inches a minute off.
Yeah, it's not the same. It's not right. So it's like, well, you have to, even if you're teaching the basics, you have to include every single variable. Just like a welding procedure. I believe they have like 36 essential variables in a welding procedure, showing all of these variables: contact tip to work distance, gun angle, travel speed, what your amperage is, what your voltage is, what your wire feed speed is, what the diameter of wire is, what your shielding gas flow rate is, what's the mix of the shielding gas that you're using. It's trimix, but what trimix is it? What
percentage, yeah.
Yeah, what's the percentage? Because all of those things are built up to give you the results that you make when you make a weld at given settings. So I think that, again, it's back to the basics, but sharing all the details. And, we want to try and set an example for other people to follow, because, this is really the only, I don't see any other way of doing it, really. Mm-hmm. Without putting all the information out there. Like it leaves too much room for gray area.
Yeah. Transparency, I think, is the fastest way to help build the industry. Because if you can essentially elevate the whole entire playing field, the competition all rises together because the knowledge is public, that's always going to be the best way. As far as I can tell.
It's like what you were saying about TIG welding in the past 10 years with social media.
Oh yeah. So like, if you look back, like, so think of back to like, so I like think of like December, like 2011, like Instagram welding scene. It's just, you had some TIG welds on there, and TIG welds are kind of like what look cool. But if you look back on those welds, like those were great at the time, but now that's not like an aspiration. That's more like that's just common. That's like standard. If you're not just doing that, then you're behind. Like that's like your goal is to always be at least that and more. And that's like what it's like today. Like you see like the most beautiful welds that like 10 years ago, you'd be like, no way, those are totally robots. But it's people that have passion and skill, and they've spent the time to develop it for years, and they're just showcasing it.
And they've figured out what the settings are and what all the knobs on the front of the machine actually does. And like, Nate was saying, the essential variables, gas mix, flow rate, cup size, tungsten or wire diameter, like all this stuff comes into effect. All of this stuff comes into a play. And
that's a epitome of a refined skill at that point.
Exactly. So what are, you've traveled to, Nate, you've traveled to a school or two, and then Rush, I'm sure you've been to plenty of schools. What are some of the things that, in your opinion, that you see them doing right? Because we've talked a lot about what's not being shown in a welding school, but like overall, what do you think's being done correctly?
I think that, there's a lot of instructors out there, and especially like, the ones that we're starting with that have a ton of passion for the industry and, are really good at teaching the kids the soft skills. I'll use this local manufacturer as an example. We trained this guy up that didn't, that had a good attitude or presumed to have a good attitude, but didn't have the skills. We trained him up. Well, I followed up with the guy that owns the place, and he's like, yeah, the guy's probably not going to make it. His attitude's changed. He missed some work. He's, like skill's still there, like not messing anything up, but just probably not going to work out. So I would say, one of the best things that I've seen in the industry is guys that can teach the soft skills. That's not something, Rush and I we would love to be able to teach the soft skills. I wouldn't say that I'm excellent at that. I'm more of kind of a matter of fact guy. And, I kind of just, today is a perfect example. Rush and I are both not feeling well, but we have this thing on our calendar and we're like, you know what, we're doing this podcast regardless of what's going on because we got work to do. How do you teach that? I think that just setting the example of like really showing up, even if it's cold or miserable or not, whatever, like it's just what we do. But I see a lot of instructors out there that really are good at teaching those soft skills. And that is a huge part of keeping a job regardless. You could be the best welder and have a horrible attitude or have no soft skills and not be able to keep a job. The other thing that I see is just a lot more acceptance from instructors of different people. A lot when I taught welding in high school, I taught at an inner city school. There was a lot of kids that were in that school that had a very, very rough home life. And as the instructor, I don't know. You're almost like, I wouldn't say like a counselor, but you could be all that some of those kids have sometimes.
Yeah.
And, I think that that's probably not talked about a ton in the industry. You did the podcast recently about recovering from alcoholism and how welding has helped people, cope with that. I think alcoholism, depression, anxiety, anything like that. I think welding has helped and saved a lot of people from that kind of thing. I know personally, there's a lot of stuff in my life that's happened that I've been able to work through by spending time under the hood. And, I think that welding instructors out there are really good at helping young welders and welders coming in the industry, like kind of find that place. And I don't know where I'm going with that, but like, you get what I'm saying?
I completely 100% understand that, because like I've recently had to step out of the classroom and guide other instructors down the path that I've previously taken. And I was talking to my nighttime welding instructor the other day, and he's like, man, he had a couple situations arise in the class, like nothing bad, but like nobody tells you, you sign up to become a welding instructor, but nobody tells you that you're, by proxy of becoming a welding instructor, you're going to become a life coach, a guidance counselor, a psychiatrist, a father figure, a financial advisor. Like nobody tells you any of this stuff when you get into welding education. It could be the same for other trades, but like I know that when I was teaching welding actively, like I was helping people with mental health issues, helping people with drug addiction, financial advice, just general life skills, like pay your taxes, don't do meth, don't speed, like just stuff that I thought was relatively simple. But, these people, like you were saying, they come from so many different backgrounds and rough upbringings, and they don't have a mentor or a father figure or that person in their life to kind of guide them and show them right from wrong. And somehow they ended up in the classroom, and it's like, that's yours to deal with. And especially with our program, because they're practically there full time. They're hitting like 32 something hours a week. So, I see the students a lot more than, I see my wife and kids a lot of times. And now, trying to explain to these instructors, like, here's what you're getting ready to get into. So it's those, like you were saying, it's those soft skills that we're able to teach. Like welding's kind of a byproduct at that point. You're so busy focused on trying to help them and grow as a person. And like, hey man, your word matters. If you tell me you're going to be here Monday through Thursday and you're going to participate in class, don't call in tomorrow and tell me, you can't make it because your parakeet's sick or, whatever the case may be. Like, be a person of your word, show up, do the job, commit, achieve the goals that you've set forth. If you said you're going to make it through welding school, I need you to be here every day and hold those students accountable for it. So yeah, I could see where soft skills are something that, educators are currently teaching correctly. The welding part, it's going to come, but and like when I talk to a lot of employers, I'm like, hey, what's the number one skill you need? And originally I was thinking like, okay, it's got to be flux core, or it's got to be stick welding or TIG welding. It's like, just send me a good person. Send me somebody that's going to be here. They say they're going to be here Monday through Friday. Send me one of those people, because if they can make it here every day and have a good attitude when they walk through the door, I can train them to do what it is we do here. So, soft skills are a freaking huge one. And like you were saying, you can't teach that in 3 days.
No, we can't. I don't even know if we could teach that in three weeks. It's just such an individual thing. And that's, I see that all the time with the instructors. I remember going through my high school welding class and just like leaning up against the welder, like complaining about whatever girl problems I was having with my instructor. And he'd be stroking his beard, and he'd just be like, well, man, I don't know. It just sounds like she's not the right one, you know? And I'm like, yeah, thanks, dude. And he's like, all right, like go weld.
Your ass back in the booth.
Yeah. So, but it's just, I think that a lot of that, I do see that a lot in the industry. And I've talked to a lot of instructors that have kind of shared stories that are similar to that, that kind of just being a good mentor for your students and stuff. I don't know whether that's caused just, by the guidance counselors or just the overall kind of perception of a welder in the industry. Like, I feel like people's perception of a welder, man, woman, or otherwise, just isn't that great. You're just this dirty, depressed, alcoholic, drug addicted, smoking, whatever. And that's just not the case. And I feel like a lot of people that go into the trade kind of might feel that like that might be them. And that like, and that's not really okay. I mean, it's just like, you're already immediately down on yourself because of a perception of the industry or, whatever, which is completely wrong. I mean, look at the conversation that we're having right now. Look at the guests that you have on your show. Look at the killer things that people are doing in the welding industry right now. The brilliant work that people are doing. And, a lot of people talk about the things that suck, about it or whatever. And, there's not enough emphasis on the good stuff. And I mean, if offline, I mean, I do a lot of like ranting and raving and complaining about a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, I mean, we've all been in the industry almost 20 years now between each one of us have been in for that long. And, I'm having a good time, and I feel lucky every day to get up and do what I do for work. And to be able to work with people that, are supportive of what I do, you guys and other people in the industry. And I think that just kind of continuing to build on that and share that kind of stuff with the rest of the welding community and help encourage other people to like support other welders and open up them DMs, and like, try to respond to people and try to help the guy out next to you.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it's all about is, putting a hand out and helping a welder up, share the knowledge, share the information. If you learn something or, you're doing something really cool, it's like, Russ was saying, like Instagram circa 2011, like people wouldn't tell you what their settings were, and like,
no way.
There's no way. I mean, like you've got people out there doing some sick ass welds, like crazy stuff. And now you shoot them a message and you're like, hey man, how do I set my machine up like that? And they're like, oh yeah, 2% thoriated, 30-degree grind angle, 67 pulses per second, 165, like they're just going through and telling you exactly what they're doing because, hey, guess what? Somebody else is interested in what I'm doing, and I'm going to help them avoid a lot of the pitfalls that I made going up through this industry. And you know what? If they surpass me, good, because then I can call that person and be like, hey, bro, how'd you do that? Information is going back and forth. So, like, I think that's the really cool part about what social media has done for us is it's combined, or it's allowed us to connect from parts unknown. I mean, hell, Rush, you're out in Salt Lake City, Utah. Nate, you're up in freaking Oregon. Like I've had
Washington.
Oregon, yeah. It's the same place. Washington, Oregon, basically, same shit. West Coast, it's raining. Northwest. Yeah, but like I had a dude on from Germany last week, and like I've talked to people like all over the place, and everybody's just willing to share what they do and their knowledge and everything. Like I've talked to people in Australia, and it's like, hey, what do you, how do you get your, how do you do what you do? And they're just like free with the information. They're like, oh yeah, here's exactly how to do it. Here's the machine I'm running, amps, volts, wire feed speed, diameter, gas composition. Like they're giving you all the essential variables to do the same thing. And I mean, hell, I've shot videos and sent it to people and be like, oh, here's how you do exactly what you're asking to do. Just showing people freely. So I think that's one thing that's really cool. Social media has been able to connect us. But I mean, just helping other people out along the way. You see that they share the same passion. They've probably had similar upbringings, and this is where life has put them. And it's like, stick with me, little buddy. We're going places, and just show somebody.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better, man. I think it's just, we keep talking about this stuff. I mean, and every time we get together, it's like, it's always the same things. And I mean, I really like the answer to like, what is Weld Labs is like, it's a combination of all of this stuff that we've been talking about for all this time. It's like, but now we have like sort of a plan and, we have a way that you can pick up a phone or send an email and say, hey, we want some of that. Can it come out and do, we want that at our business or we want that at our school or whatever it may be. And, we're providing an avenue for that. And we're trying to set the best example that we possibly can. Like, this is not a This is not a get rich scheme. This is almost like a selfish, Rush and I want to go out and weld with people and still figure out how to get paid and make a living doing what we're doing. It's very much that. Like I want to go learn how to weld stick with, or pipe with some of the best people in the industry. And I want to tell that story for people to, other people that's not there, to be able to see it and to be able to learn from our experiences and learn from the things that we're doing. That's why we want to collaborate with you and other people, because there's so much out there. And with Rush and I's network of people and followers and stuff, it's like, man, let's give everybody as much as we can.
No, it's great. I'm looking forward to it. So when does your tour kick off? What do you guys have lined up so far?
Let me look at the calendar here. Right now, I think the first thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be probably in Texas within the next month or so, working with a school down there. We're going to be kind of working on a multi-day event with them, getting to know the instructors, getting to know the guy that runs the school, getting introduced to some local high schools in the area as well. I don't really want to say who it is yet until we kind of have everything all official, but it's a pretty big school, and we're just excited to work with them. We have 6 slots for high school and trade schools that we're going to visit throughout the next year. One of them is in New Hampshire. One of them is in upstate New York. One of them is in Illinois. Obviously, you are in Florida. And then we have some in Texas. And then we have, I believe, one other spot that's still potentially open. Not sure on that one yet. But and we're going to post, the other thing too is we're going to post the dates for the events up on the Weld Labs page. And we'll definitely post and talk about it leading up to the events, including the one that we do with you. So that way, anybody that's in the area that wants to come in and just spend time under the hood or weld after hours or in the evening or whatever, we're just going to order pizza and wings and just weld and answer questions and just kind of create an environment where people can learn and just, show us what you got. We'll show you what we got. Hang out and have a good time.
That'd be cool.
Take photos and post it and just kind of share the excitement about, what we're doing. It's kind of like Fab Tech. The best parts of Fab Tech are when all of us get together and we can just weld.
Yeah.
And everybody's welding and I weld and you weld. And then everybody's oh man, that's sick. All right. It's like a game of skate, but with welding.
Yeah. So I would recommend that depending on where you're at in Texas, you've got to check out, if time permits and the schedules line up, check out the Texas High School Welding Series. Yeah.
That may be who we're going to see.
Okay. That's kind of big organization.
We might be. That might be some of the people that we're talking to.
Yeah. Definitely check them out because they do. I wish Florida had something like that. But we'll throw a welding competition and I'll get a lot of students from my school and then a bunch of people from industry, but none of the other schools show up. So we're actually doing one. I'm teaming it up with Daryl Peterson with the West Coast section of AWS. We're putting on a big welding competition April 2nd over at his shop. So that's going to be actually pretty cool, but I'm looking forward to that one. But yeah, I think that's as close as I'm going to get to anything like what Texas High School Welding Series has. But welding in Texas, there are different breed of people out there, man. That's the welding capital of the United States, if you ask me.
Yeah. What would you want to do when we come out? So if you had 3 days, to hang out with you, what do you have in mind? What would be really cool to do?
I'm gonna put you to work, man, because I just want you guys to reinforce and back up everything that we tell our students already. So the funny thing is I would tell my students clean your base metal, spend the majority of the time prepping everything up, because if it's prepped right, it's gonna weld right. I already know you got the skills. Treat your practice just like it's a certification test. And then they're like, they're half-assing their practice. And it's like, what are you doing? Well, this is just a practice piece. Yeah, but if you treat all your practices, welding on a rusty trailer, fabricating a go-kart frame, if you treat all this like a certification test, you'll never weld any different. But if you
that's
practice,
why Rush's welds look so good.
Yeah, but if you practice on shit, you're gonna weld like shit. And then when you go to take the test, you're gonna shit the bed because you've always half-assed your practice and you've half-assed your prep. So like, I actually had a CWI come into my class prior to me becoming a CWI back when I was teaching, and this wasn't even staged. I just brought this dude in. He was recommended by a friend. I'd never met him before a day in my life. And the coolest thing was, for 45 minutes, he just told my students, reinforced everything that I told them for a year. And it was like, because it was coming from somebody else and it had come from me previously, it just, okay, he wasn't like full of crap. Like, this is some serious stuff. But I think just when you guys come down to our lab, like, let's hit up some of the advanced processes. Let's do some STT. If I don't think you got access to hyperfill, but I mean, that'd be something cool. I want to check that out. So I'm going to see. I think Charlie's bringing.
Potentially we could do that.
Okay.
I might be able to get in touch with like the local Lincoln rep and have
I got his number.
Yeah, we could get the hyperfill demo out there.
Okay.
I guess we can. Now's as good a time as any. So Rush and I are talking about potentially building like a Pelican case to be able to transport Rush's RKX 220. Is it 220? RKX 220. Yeah, RKX 220. So we're thinking about putting a case together so that we can actually just like fly that out to an event with us. So that way we have Rush's real actual welder that you can play with, rather than you've seen it on TV. Like, it's really,
that sounds ridiculous putting it in a Pelican case, but it's only like 24 inches by 24 by 8 inches wide. And it weighs 60 pounds with the water cooler filled and attached. So it's like, it's a little guy.
Yeah. Just toss that in the thing. I'll be like, hey, sorry, man. It must have got lost in shipping. Make sure you put it as signature required on delivery.
Yeah.
Unless it's my UPS guy. He doesn't give a shit. He'll just leave it at the door.
Yeah. So that's something that we're planning on doing. I guess I can tell people now on this podcast, now that I got the official word, but I'm getting my own hyperfill S500 system.
Yeah.
So I'll have an S500 with an advanced module, a dual feeder, dual cylinder cart that I'm going to be building out and customizing. And then, all this hyperfill stuff that we talk about, on this, I'm going to start showing people like in real life. Like, we're going to go weld real stuff. We're just going to go to like Tim's shop down the street and he's welding 3/8 material. Well, here's 3/8 material at 18 or 20 pounds an hour, which is 5 times as fast as, they're welding it. I believe a lot in the technology, but I think that like it's something that you need to put in your hand and see, just like you said. So I'm going to be working a lot with Lincoln on trying to get this new technology out. I mean, and then that's the other thing that Rush and I are doing with Weld Labs is we want to be able to facilitate that sort of thing with anybody that wants to see any sort of modern technology. You have Rush and I there to kind of help you get the most out of it and understand the application and understand like, what you're getting yourself into. If you get into the, whether it's a RKX 220 or a advanced process machine from, any company, ESAB, Miller, Lincoln, whoever, we want to show you how to use it and how to get the most out of it so that you can win with that piece of technology. And again, like, we don't sell any of this stuff with the exception
that's
of
something that's very common. That's a very common thing that you just like are talking about or leading into is I get a lot of questions about different machines and they're like, hey, I'm running into this issue. Like, how, like, do you know what's going on? And a lot of the time people don't. It's like so like I'll reference like aluminum TIG welding for like one of the biggest questions. It's like, hey, I'm getting this, or my tungsten's balling up a lot and it's splitting, but like my balance is set at this. You have to know what your machine balance range is based off of. So like machines are like, there's a lot of machines that are common. Like you have a Miller that's like 0 to 100. And then it's like 100 is 100% EN, 0 is like on your EP. or whatever, and then you can dial it one way or the other. And so if you're at 60% EN, how does that translate to other machines? Like if you're on an Everlast machine, 60% EN is going to be 40 on an Everlast TIG welder. And that's like, it's hard to understand. And so just like clearing up those gaps, so people know what they're at, in order to set their machines to the proper settings, and like how to translate the interface and the operating system on all that equipment. Or if it's old school analog, like maybe you're running an old transformer machine and you need to get it all dialed in. What are going to be the variables from machine to machine, and how to get somebody all on the right page and know how to use that to their best ability.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. It's like jumping into a car you're not really familiar with. So when people come up and they're like, "Hey, I'm running this, these settings. Can you help me out?" A lot of times, like you said, you got to ask them, what machine are you running? Because some machines are backwards, so it's like your percentage, might be EN on one platform, but on the other machine, it's EP. So just knowing the differences and the nuances in those different pieces of equipment, I mean, it's a big thing to know, when you're talking about the parameters of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the, go ahead.
I just lost my train of thought. So
what are some of the other things you guys are looking forward to as you come through and you start rolling out weld labs? Like what, what are you looking forward to most on these different trips, going to the different shops, high schools, and technical schools?
The best part about it is it's a new level of excitement. Honestly, kind of like that I felt myself, like getting into welding, back. So when I was 14, that's when I was inspired to get into welding. And going into it, I was luckily I fell into a program that had a really great instructor that was supportive and let me kind of just go at my own pace, and make the sense of everything. Mm-hmm. And he was the best. He was really supportive of me. He didn't have all the answers, but he had equipment and gave me the freedom to figure those things out for myself, which was really, really cool. And I like to go back and teach there and help kind of remind the future generation coming through the school, that there's a lot of cool things that can happen getting into this career. And just because you're not a certain way, it doesn't really matter. It's really going to be whatever you make it yourself. And so when we go into any shop, kind of having that reminder and that goal in mind, where it's we're here to inspire the future generation of welders, and in the best way that we can and the best way that we know how. One thing from one of the guys that we work with and trained, he mentioned to me, he's like, "Hey, like what you said, he's like, I've always been the dumb kid in school." And he's like, "Thank you for taking the time to explain this to me in a way that I could understand, because now I learned it and I know, and I'm really excited about this." And he's like, "I'm not dumb. I just needed a different way." And so that's where I think the biggest thing and the biggest focus is focused on the learning, not the teaching, because the teaching needs to be adaptive, because in order to deliver that end result that you want, you have to work with the medium that is laid out for you to work with.
Exactly.
And being able to meet that in a way where it can be, where everything can stay fluid, but yet malleable, and you can mold that into something, mold that person into something that's better and has that new value. That's the ultimate goal.
Yeah. I think I've told this story a couple times on the podcast. It's I failed trigonometry 3 times. And I thought, I'm just a dumb kid. I'm never going to get this. I might as well just drop out right now because I'm not going to get this. And on my 4th attempt, it was 2 weeks into class, the teacher seen me struggling. And she's like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" "I'm a structural steel iron worker. I'm just a dumb iron worker. I'm a welder. I'm a dumb kid. This is always all I've always been." And she's like, well, you work with squares, protractors, and like speed squares and all this. And I was like, yeah. I was actually doing a job at the time, and she was like, well, I was doing a job that required a lot of like compound angles and miters, and like I understood it with those tools in front of me. She goes, we're doing the same exact thing. We're just using a calculator. And I was like, and like when I was at work, I got like my square out, my protractor, a piece of cardboard, and a Sharpie. And it makes sense to me. I can draw this out and I can see it. Well, now I'm just operating in the Cartesian coordinates. Like I never knew what the hell that shit was. But then when they explain, like, we're just doing the same thing, but with a calculator. And when we talk about Cartesian coordinates, if you've ever drawn in like a CAD system, that's your X and your Y. And I'm like now all this stuff made sense because now it's relevant to me and it sunk in. So it was like, holy shit, I'm not the dumb kid. I've just been doing it a different way. I've been doing it my way for like 10, 12 years. And now I'm like learning, from a different viewpoint. And then it made sense to me. And I passed the class with a B, like a high B. And it wasn't the fact that I was the dumb kid and it was like my fourth attempt getting this stuff and it finally clicked. It was that teacher showing me to say, hey, like we're taking exactly what you do with your hands and we're just putting it in digital form. And it was like, boom, the light clicked on. I had my eureka moment, and then I was able to track because every time I'm putting something in my calculator, I'm thinking about how I would work this on my protractor or my square at work. And then it just made sense to me. So yeah, the welding kids, they're not the dumb kids. They just learn different, and you can't put you can't put the square pegs in the round hole. If we judge every fish on its ability to climb a tree, we're going to have a lot of dumb fish out there, So it's a big thing, Everybody learns a little bit different. So I think that's really cool, Rush, that you're kind of going back, you're going to, and you're getting that fire reignited in you, and then you're going to go out there and set that fire for a lot of other people.
Yeah,
it's so exciting. It's fun to see people excited about accomplishing something that's so new and so powerful. Like it feels like incredible when you accomplish like your welding goals, like, and you hit those goals and achievements. It just, it makes you feel incredible. Mm-hmm. And it's fun to help people hit those goals faster and have it make sense to them. Because now it's not, they're getting lucky by running. They're not just practicing and then basically like out of all your insanity, you luck out and you start hitting your results. It's, you practice based off of your knowledge for the goal in mind, and then you are in control of like the variables to the most of your ability. And so it's a different outlook on it. And it's just, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So Nate, what are you looking forward to most on these trips, whether you're going to schools or employers? What are you looking forward to do most?
I'm going to go the like selfish route. I think that one of the things that I really miss is welding. Like I don't weld as much as I used to. And I think probably all of us can say the same thing. Yeah. Like we don't spend as much time. Like when I was out in the field, I was, under the hood, 50 hours a week, probably, welding things. And, I just don't have that opportunity anymore. Just given where I'm at in my career, like my job is now focused on answering people's questions and solving problems. And, doesn't always involve time under the hood, which is one of my favorite parts about welding is the welding part. Like when you're under the hood and you're in your nice jacket and gloves and you have your machine set perfectly and you have all the like great stuff that you have, and you can actually go and make welds. And then like just welding with different people and on different equipment and in different circumstances. I'm really excited about that because, welding's a skill that you have to practice. Working with Rush, I've learned a ton just welding with Rush, like just spending time in the same space, watching what he does, trying to mimic what he does, and then, you know, discussing like results and things that I need to change or whatever. It's helping me grow as a welder and helping me, you know, expand that skill set. I mean, and I think, you know, as a welder, we always like have this desire for like perfection. And I think the reality is like, it's never really achieved. It's just something you always strive for, like with every single weld. And I'm just genuinely like really looking for all these, like, looking forward to all these opportunities to weld on all sorts of different stuff, different welders, with different people, you know, over the shoulder of somebody that has way more skill than I have, that can show me something that I've missed or that I don't know. That's really what I'm looking forward to is soaking up that knowledge and then being able to help kind of pass that on. You know, as these old timers move on and as the new people come in, I think that just being in that intersection between, you know, learning something new and putting it out there is like, just sounds like a rad place to be.
That'd be the cool thing. And that's one thing I really miss about like being under the hood, welding all the time, is like learning the new stuff, you know, like going to check out a new shop and like learning a new process, or going to a different workshop or a seminar and like learning more about what other people do, you know. And it's like, I'm kind of a big fish in a small pond where I'm at. But the cool thing is every once in a while when you get to dive into, you know, like jump into a different lake and see what other people are doing in their wheelhouse. Like when I got to go down to Houston, Texas and watch those guys rock out on pipe welding, it's like, damn, that's like, it's killer. And you're all up in there, you know, checking everything out, because it's like a moth to a flame, man. Like all these different welding processes, I want to learn them all. They're like Pokemon, man. I want to catch them all. Like I want to learn all this stuff. So I think, you know, you guys being able to travel the States and like, you know, going back to what we said at the beginning of the episode, checking out the aerospace industry, checking out doing roll cages and structural and pipe fabrication and manufacturing sector and laser welding and like NASCAR and like all this different stuff, just being able to see all these different facets. I think you guys are going to have a blast doing that. And I can't wait for you to stop by our school. We just got a new facility built, but like I want to use you guys to bounce back and forth between the two facilities, you know, just so we can show all 4 classes. But I'm really looking forward to having you guys down here. Where can folks reach out to you if they're a company that, you know, they want to get dialed in, they want to improve their weld procedures or their processes, or they're a high school or a tech school and they want to have you guys come in and do some weld demo on advanced processes? Like, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Probably just labs@weldlabs.co is probably the easiest, like just the email. Like that's kind of where we're tracking all of our like, I guess all of our potential like people that we partner with, our DMs on social media, my cell phone, you know, like you can call if you want. My cell phone number is available on all my social media platforms and our websites and stuff. Like you can always pick up the phone and call us. Yeah, I mean, I think like we're pretty accessible. I mean, you can just go online and search for Weld Labs or Rush or Nate, and we will find a way to find you.
Okay.
Yeah, labs@weldlabs.co. Like email that. That's like, yeah, for sure. Like you'll get in contact with us.
Well, awesome, guys. It's been a pleasure having you back on the podcast again. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you showing up to work, even though you're both under the weather, you're both sick and everything. But I mean, like when Nate said, he's like, oh yeah, I'm down with COVID, but yeah, we'll make it happen. I was like, freaking typical welder, man. I'm sick, but yeah, I'm still going to be there. Like the job's still got to get done. The world's not going to stop turning. So I appreciate both of you coming on the show and kind of sharing your story about Weld Labs and everything, getting this information out there to the masses. Can't wait for you guys to come down here to sunny Florida. We're going to have a blast. We'll set some stuff up like after hours, which I don't know how we're going to do that because I got a night class, but Florida's open 24/7, man. We'll get into something.
Absolutely. Awesome. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for having us on.
Oh, anytime. And like I said, if I can do anything to help promote Weld Labs, what you guys got going on, reach out and let me know.
Will do.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for tuning in to the podcast. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for a new episode of Just the Tip, where I discuss amplitude, also known as DC offset for aluminum TIG applications. And be sure to tune in February 2nd for a new episode of Weld Wednesday with AWS, where I discuss qualification versus certification with District 5 Director and Senior CWI Daryl Peterson. Hope you all have a safe and productive week out there, and until next time, make every weld better than your last.